Okay, don't move. I just finished a book called Dune. My immediate thoughts on Dune are that I really don't like the author's ubiquitous, useless usage of the word presently in his own hand. Frank Herbert wrote Dune, and he really, really, really likes the word presently. He uses it way too fucking much. And in effect, is very similar to when old hags and caring mothers, the same alike, tell me that I use the word fuck too much in my writing. I don't. But Frank Herbert definitely overuses the word presently. Frank Herbert keeps misusing and misappropriating the word jihad. The first instance of the word shows up at the end of book 1, on like the last page of book 1, and it's as a result of Paul's vision of Fremen armies being led by Paul across the galaxy on a jihad. And in no instance of the usage of the word jihad in this novel is it used correctly. It's used in place of the word and probably synonymous with the word holy war, but that's not what jihad means. Imagine like a kid is getting bullied on the playground and you notice that kid is getting bullied and you go over to say, "Hey, bully, turn and face me for a minute." And the bully faces you and you punch him in the face. You get that other kid that was being bullied, you get him away from the bully. And you're like, "Hey, if you come near this kid again, I'm gonna hit you in the face again." And then the bullying stops. That's what jihad means. There's also personal jihads, which are like different. They take place within your own body. And that's very similar to the Augustinian spiritual warfare. And it is interesting that the Fremen in this novel are all Sunnis. But the only like real holy scriptures that exist within this world are the OC Bible, and he does quote Augustine at one point. I have no idea if Frank Herbert has ever read this book or not, but I do know that this book, Dune, was written in the 1960s. Maybe he just did not know that that's what jihad means. Jihad means going to the aid of your fellow Muslim brothers and sisters when they're in trouble. Like, for example, if Saladin, who kicked out Richard the Lionheart from the Holy Land, if he had taken his boats then and gone to England and then burned down villages in England, that would not have been a jihad, because there are no Muslims like born and living and being oppressed in England at that time in history. All throughout the remainder of the novel, Paul just keeps thinking about, "I don't want to go on this jihad." And I'm like, that's not what that means. And so many people love this book I'm worried that so many people have the wrong idea about jihad. It does not mean holy war. Frank Herbert has this trick that he uses to make his characters seem like a genius. And the trick is, he just has other characters call his main character a genius, and then suddenly the main character is a genius. Even though he doesn't do a whole lot that's really genius. He can just think hard about the future and about things that are going to happen. The personalization of Paul, as I'm going to call him, in which I think the book should have been called Paul, the personalization that I get more so reveals a sociopath, high-functioning sociopath, or in some points in this novel is a psychopath rather than a genius. And especially at the very end, the last page of the novel, or the last 2 or 3 pages, it ends terribly, because all I can think about is, you are dooming Princess Irulan simply because she's the daughter of the Emperor. I don't really care that we're looking at a different conception about what marriage means. I don't think that Paul will ever mistreat Princess Irulan in her life, but I do care. Princess Irulan is whatever she is because of a fucking prophecy or a destiny or whatever. This whole book deals with destiny, but doesn't at the same time, because the destiny happens. I don't know whether Frank Herbert believes in destiny or doesn't believe in destiny, as opposed to in my book, where I say that destiny is for pussies. There's no choice that Frank Herbert makes on whether or not he believes in destiny or doesn't believe in destiny. He says that a premonition happens or a prophetic vision happens and then it comes true, but then in other cases Paul has the choice on whether or not to make it come true. And sometimes he can't see. And sometimes the Spice Barons, they can't see whether or not the future is going to come true or not. And none of that makes any fucking sense to me. Maybe you're supposed to make your own mind about whether or not you believe in destiny, but that's a cop-out, you know? What is Frank Herbert trying to say? In most every essence that I can see, this is a work of terrible analogies. It's not done very well. It's not like The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, where the lion is obviously Jesus. In this book, it's done terribly because Arrakis is obviously Iraq. I mean, the analogy isn't even an analogy. It's just like, boop, boop, Arrakis. Oh, it's a band of Sunnis living in the desert who have a spice under their feet. And they wear turbans. And they have blue eyes. For some reason, the spice makes their eyes go blue. And I suppose that might have been Frank Herbert's way of not being racist, was to make the sand people have blue eyes. None of my complaints about this novel have anything to do with the story. It's a decently fine story. It's a decently fine plot. It's about a prince whose father is killed, and then he has to make a decision on whether or not he wants to kill the emperor or not. That's the book. And it's called Dune, but really Dune is a secondary character. It's not really a main character. And this whole subplot with the Fremens and going into the caves and becoming the Kwisatz Haderach and becoming Lisan al-Gaib, these are all secondary to his primary motivation, which is to kill the people who killed his father. Especially at the end really does it in for me, that I'm like, I don't like this. The last sentence of the book is, history will call us wives. And I'm like, no, history's gonna call you plot devices. I really want to know what this book would have looked like if it was written by a woman. I'm gonna be honest, that's a terrible way to end a novel. I really like all the characters that showed up. My favorite character is is definitely Gunny Haddock. Most of what he says reminds me of people that I worked with in the military, so his character's just, it's right. I like Gunny a lot. He reminds me of Han Solo, but Dune is not like my favorite book. It's not, for some reason, something about the book just isn't as prophetic to me as it is for other people. The worms are cool, but they don't strike me in the same way as they do for other people. I'm wondering, like, did I read it at the wrong point in my life? Was I supposed to read it when I was younger? Because maybe if I had read this book when I was like 15, I would have been a lot more fascinated by it. But since I'm reading it at 30, I don't think it's a bad book, but it's definitely not my favorite. And I'm sad because so many people hold this book up as like the pinnacle of science fiction. I'm not sure it's there. I'm not sure it's the top. I don't think it is. There are a lot of instances in this novel when I'm like, I could have written this, and that sucks. That sucks. That's a sucky feeling. I hate feeling that because I don't have anything published, but I've got the same tricks that Frank Herbert uses. I mean, he's got this trick where he puts Princess Irulan's thoughts throughout the book as like a mythological tome. It's like heroology. She's speaking about the past as someone who's looking up in awe and fascination of Muad'Dib, the Kwisatz Lisan al-Gaib. He's such a powerful figure. Meanwhile, if you look at it even slightly closely, you realize that Frank just wanted his character to seem loftier. So he literally wrote passages of a holy book to make the characters seem holy. The book would be just as good without any of Princess Irulan's plot. That's something that I noticed about a lot of this book. There are things that are just unnecessary, but it's nice that it's there because you get to read more. What do I like about the novel? I really like the tone of environmentalism, analogies to climate change, especially in the 1960s when we were realizing how terrible carbon dioxide was for the environment. This is when the Earth Day movement started. This is when Silent Spring came out. This book goes in that climate change pantheon of novels that needs to be read in order to, like, just sink into your consciousness. The things we do to our environment alter our environment. If you look for a mineral in the desert, there are consequences to doing this. Every time you dig for the spice, the worms come. That's obviously a metaphor to the wars that happen in the Middle East over oil, especially in the 1960s when this was written, but it's even more profound as of the last like 20, 30, 40 years with the war on terror. Very profound, and at the same time, it's very on the nose. I've heard that there are sequels to Dune, so I'm gonna read those. Maybe I will like them better. I can't believe I'm saying this. I hate reviews because everyone in reviews just says how they hate the books that I love, and I'm like, I don't hate your book. I just don't think it's a masterpiece. I think it's fine. I think it's a decent book. I don't have a rating system yet. I'm gonna give this 8 Hollands out of 10.